I know, you most likely read the title of this video and immediately shook your head in denial, convinced that this is probably me putting together a clickbait video to bait you into doing just that. Click. But stay with me here. What if it wasn't? What if I'm actually able to convince you that Portia Featherington is not only a girl's girl, but is also the best mother you've got in the show, one of her time, one who understands female solidarity and is willing to do anything to make sure that she and hers are well taken care of and get only the best. Because she understands the intricacies of the world that they've been born into as women, the limitations that they have to suffer through, and the best chances they have with which to thrive. And speaking of thriving, do take a second to like this video if you can and hit the subscribe button if you aren't yet. It does help grow my channel. Before I go further into explaining how and why Portia Featherington is a girl's girl, we have to start with a definition. One that highlights the many qualities and traits present in a girl's girl and with which we can judge Portia's behavior in the story so far, from season 1 to the first half of season 3. Although I have read the books and know what is coming in the second half, I will try my absolute damnedest to not go into spoiler territory in this video because that's just good manners. In an opinion piece written in the South Texan, a Texas A&M University Kingsville student publication magazine, Abigail Aiden defines a girl's girl as a woman who supports other women in all aspects of life. In a sense, she would be your friend who is excited for the new apartment you moved into, or the co-worker who helps you succeed in your job by helping you plan a large project, or even the girl you run into in the bathroom at the club who tells you that your makeup is pretty. The opinion piece ends by defining a girl's girl as being supportive, kind, and compassionate, as it is important, especially now, to be able to build positive and progressive relationships with women, to just let each other know there is always someone there and to be there for. Mallory Mickle of the Odyssey defines a girl's girl as someone who supports their friends in all of their decisions while simultaneously keeping their friends in check. A girl's girl has their friend's best interests at heart and will drop anything in order to help another girl. From these definitions, we can conclude that these are the traits we are examining. Does Portia Featherington support other women in all aspects of life? Is she someone who is more likely to help you succeed by helping you, say, plan a large project? Does she take actions or use words to convince other women of their beauty? Does she get excited for the wins of those in her circle? Is she supportive, kind, and compassionate? Is she someone who is always there for the women in her life? Does she support the decisions of the women in her life while keeping them in check? Is she someone who has their best interests at heart and will do her damnedest to help them? Now, the reason why I'm tweaking the statement's recipient of the girls' interactions from friends to other women is because we see established in the story that Portia Featherington doesn't really have friends. And she's not really the odd one out in this regard. A lot of the women and mothers in the ton do not have friends. Not Violet Bridgerton, not Araminta Cowper. The only maybe pseudo friendship we get between mothers in the story is probably Queen Charlotte and Lady Danbury. But it isn't really a friendship because, once again, there's still that power imbalance, although Queen Charlotte, the show, and the first half of Bridgerton season 3 seems to be trying to rectify that. And before you tell me that Violet Bridgerton and Lady Danbury are friends, they aren't. They are friendly, but not friends in that true sense of the word. The close bonds, the shared secrets, they don't have that with each other. And I personally think that this lack of relationships, of friendships between the mamas of the ton is connected to the words Cressida mentioned to Eloise about how the ton pits girls against each other. But I will go into more details on that in my Cressida video that will be dropping next week, Wednesday, at the usual time of 5 p.m. EST. But yes, back to what I was saying. I made the tweaks because Portia doesn't really have any friends in the show. Her relationship with Vali, whilst close, cannot be considered a friendship as there is a bit of a power imbalance in said relationship due to Portia being the lady of the house and Vali her housekeeper. And so I'm supplanting her friendships with her relationship with her daughters and her ward, because these are the women she does have a continued, consistent relationship with in the story and spends enough time, sufficient time with, that we can draw logical conclusions about. So let's start with the first point. Does Portia Featherington support other women in all aspects of life? I think this one is pretty clear. Say what you will about Portia being a villain or an antagonist or being mean to Marina in the first season of the show, but let's be honest. in that time period, Marina was already courting scandal as it was. If not for Lord Featherington's death, Portia wouldn't have even had to deal with the issue. She was saddled with the responsibility of a Marina who is 3 months pregnant and who every day she was in their home was at risk of being discovered, which would have damaged not just Marina's reputation as her ward, but also the reputation and integrity of her daughters as well. Their society gives leeway to the gentlemen of the town to sow their wild oats. The women don't need to be proper and keep their legs closed. Marina fell in love, had sex, and is now pregnant. That is a big scandal. Made even worse because Portia wasn't informed of the situation, and if not for Varley noticing the absence of a menstrual cycle, Marina fully intended to keep it a secret until she was showing, all because she was waiting for a letter from George Crane, who at that point she had no idea was dead and wouldn't be writing back to her. Do I think what Portia did with stealing Marina's letters from George and forging his signature to get her to stop waiting for him and start making active plans for her life and her child's future was horrid? Yes. Do I think she, however, did it in some misguided way to help herself, her daughters, and Marina, who she believed wasn't being realistic about her present situation and the shitstorm she was about to stir up? Yes. Do I think she was right? To an extent, yes. And even Marina does too. When Penelope, in her bid to get Marina to give up her plans to entrap Colin into a marriage where it would be very publicly cuckolded, shows Marina proof that the letter from George rejecting her and her baby was forged, Marina tells her it doesn't matter. She's unwed, pregnant with 0 chances, and George wasn't responding. Yes, we know that Sir Philip Crane does eventually show up to the rescue, and that is all well and good, but this is a show based off of a series of romance novels. And I don't know if you all noticed this, but Portia Featherington is clearly not living in a romance novel. She's living in reality. And if we are being honest, if the plot of the romance hadn't brought Sir Philip Crane to come and take responsibility on behalf of his dead brother and thus married Marina so he can father his nephew and niece, Marina would have been fucked. Portia, although her plan wasn't fully executed because of several reasons, was doing what she could in her own way, considering the time and what she had to work with to help support Marina through her pregnancy and her schemes. She recognized Marina's game, was impressed by it, and did her bit to make it work, giving advice where she could. Sure, her support wasn't altruistic. She admitted that if not for Lord Featherington's indebtedness to Marina's father, she would have tossed her out because, I repeat, that was a scandal that would mess up her entire family, and she wasn't about to screw her daughter's chances for Lord Featherington's ward. So yeah, she did it for the money. But it didn't mean that her support and plan wasn't the better option for a girl who was out of prospects with a time bomb of a secret ticking down pretty quickly. Then there's the question of if Portia Featherington is more likely to help the women in her life succeed by helping them, say, plan a large project. Once again, we'll refer to Marina and the entire ploy of getting a husband quickly to avoid the disgrace of being caught unwed with child. That was a huge undertaking that Portia took to immediately. Yes, a first set of suitors weren't suited for Marina, but that was because Portia was being very calculated with the men she was suggesting. Older men who wanted heirs and wouldn't care if the child that was born to them wasn't their heir. They would not mind being cuckolded and would just be happy to have a seeming heir from their new bride. And when Marina set her cap on Colin Bridgerton and was able to successfully get him to propose, Portia set to work on getting the wedding date moved forward, knowing that a quick engagement will serve Marina's purpose best. Trying to entrap a man, especially in that time period, was quite the substantial project. It definitely takes a high level of cunning and people being willing to work on your side to make it happen. If it had been anybody else that Marina had set her cap on, if she hadn't insisted on Colin, even though Penelope asked her not to consider him, Marina and Portia's plan totally would have succeeded. The next question to ask is if Portia Featherington takes actions or uses words to convince other women of their beauty. Now, this is a little tricky because on one hand, we see just how horribly Portia speaks to Penelope. Absolutely horrible. But on the other hand, she also thinks that Prudence and Philippa are quite pretty. Not very bright, but she thinks they are lovely. She believes that Prudence has assets that can be used to advantage, especially when she set her off to try and seduce Jack Featherington to help secure their inheritance. In addition, after Penelope's wardrobe haul, Portia looks taken aback and a bit disappointed. She tells Philippa that if Penelope wants to wear such a melancholy color, then it's her prerogative, confirming that Portia's choice of her daughter's wardrobes wasn't done out of malice. She legit thinks that the colors and designs she puts Penelope in, for example, are very flattering on her because they are Portia's colors and they flatter her. So she assumes they would work for her daughter as well. We can infer that if Portia believes that the outfits look beautiful on her and make her look beautiful, then by extension, having her make the choice to clothe her daughters in the same colors and designs is her erroneously thinking that what looks good on her will look good on them too. And so she believes to an extent that she's making her daughters look and feel even more beautiful. It is a pity that her desires are in reality, but we can see where the thought comes from, and it is not bad when you think about it. Then there is the question of, does Portia Featherington get excited for the wins of the women in her circle? The answer to that is yes. She was ecstatic and very impressed when she learned that Marina had been able to secure an engagement to Colin Bridgerton. She was also happy for Marina when Sir Philip showed up to do right by her and his brother's child, because to her that would help save Marina's face, secure her future, and prevent her child from being born a bastard. She was delighted for the girl. When Philippa was finally able to marry Albion Finch, she was just as happy for her daughter, and it went beyond her trying to secure a prodigious match for Philippa. The Finches are entitled, nor are they particularly wealthy. But she could see that Albion loved her little girl, and Philippa liked him back as well, which was what made her so angry at Lord Featherington for spending Philippa's dowry and ruining her chances at her marriage that she wanted. So when Jack Featherington showed up and was able to pay the Finches with the ruby that they had no idea was fake, she looked beyond pleased at the news. She was happy for her. Now, the next point is where a lot of people have objections and would have objections to Portia Featherington, and I'm sure you all were waiting for me to get there. Is Portia supportive, kind, and compassionate? I believe that dichotomies exist within us all. As human beings, we are capable of acts of sheer cruelty and utter compassion in equal measure. The same applies to Portia Featherington. Is she often mean-spirited with a tongue that can be very cutting and cruel? Yes. But does she also show moments of her being supportive, kind, and compassionate? Yes. After Marina realizes that the abortion tea she had drunk didn't do anything for her and she was still pregnant, she finally agreed to marry Sir Philip Crane. Before they left, Marina took a moment to ask Portia how she endured 22 years of a loveless marriage, and Portia's response to this question was kind, was compassionate, was honest, and one could say supportive of Marina's future life and happiness. She assured her that she would find things to love, small things, big things, like her children, for example, and eventually all these things would add up and they would be enough. She tells Marina that she is strong, perhaps stronger than Portia herself, and so she believes that Marina will do well. That was the first time we saw Portia without the armor, without the schemes, without the airs. She was a woman telling a fellow woman the hard truth, but in the kindest and most supportive of ways, acknowledging that her road will not be smooth or rosy based off of her own experience, but that there will be joys to be had, and that she believes in her chances and her succeeding. It was a beautiful moment and scene. And even in the first half of season 3, after the reveal that Penelope asked Colin to help her find a husband, Portia tries in her own way to extend her support, kindness, and compassion to her daughter. Sure, she reacted first with frustration, but then she caught that glimpse of Penelope's face, realized that her daughter was hurting, and tried to comfort her by telling her that being a spinster wasn't too bad and men were more trouble than they were worth. It wasn't as effective as we would have preferred, But she did extend that consolation to Penelope, which was her own way of being kind and trying to help. Then there's the question of if she's someone who is always there for the women in her life. And we see that through the series. Once again, with how she handled the Marina issue and also her pushing to secure her children's inheritance. In the face of a death-ridden and eventually dead husband and a swindling Jack Featherington who arrived to claim his dead cousin's estate. With her husband, she took him to task for causing Philippa pain and trying to ruin her potential marriage to Albion. And when Archibald Featherington croaks and Jack Featherington takes over, she is delighted when he seemingly helps resolve Philippa's dowry issues. But her happiness is short-lived because then Jack seems intent on marrying Cressida, and she immediately considers this to be a potential problem for her girls, and Mrs. Varley, who might all be tossed out of their home were Jack to marry Cressida. To help secure her daughter's inheritance and home, even without them being aware of it, she starts to plot and scheme. And her plan eventually leads to her tricking Prudence into being discovered alone with Jack, thus forcing his hands to ask for Prudence's hand in marriage. And when at the end of the second season, with his ruse discovered, Jack expressed his desire to leave England with Portia to the Americas and leave her daughters behind, she did the one thing a protective mother would do. She sacrificed him to secure her daughter's future. Their father might have been trash, and Jack even more so. But if there is anybody who is always going to defend those girls and stay in their corner, then it is Portia Featherington. When Jack talks about he and Portia being a team, she tells him that she already has a team. They are 3 young girls, often nettling and contrary, but they are hers, and it is clear to her that Jack doesn't care for them at all. Nobody who has watched Bridgerton can argue about Portia Featherington's actions and motivations. They have always been for her girls. All 3 of them, yes, even Penelope. She would always be there for her daughters, wanting them to be secure. She's not big on love because that isn't her experience, nor has it served her. But she knows that marrying a bad man, a man who can't keep his finances in order or properly take care of his family and household, is a terrible idea. It is a lesson she's had to learn the hard way, and not one she wants to put her daughters through either. That's what makes her Portia. It's what makes her their mother. Like she says in response to Jack's accusation that she is cruel. Portia really truly is a mother. In fact, she's the mother. She's had to scrape and manipulate her way, but it's always been in service of her family and her children. No one would look at her and think she's had it easy. She hasn't. And we see that clearly through the show. We also see how she supports the decisions of the women in her life while she keeps them in check. We see this in action with Marina. When she realizes that Marina believes she can keep her baby, she takes her to the other side of town to show her a reality check. And although Marina initially tells her that she isn't intimidated and doesn't care, she does change her mind after the forged letter and the realization that if George really doesn't show up, she's fucked. When Marina actively starts taking charge of her options and starts to scheme with regards the best potential husband and father for her unborn child, Portia is there to offer support. And when it all comes crashing down and Sir Philip comes around to do right by his dead brother's child and the mother of said child, she urges Marina to take the offer and hold on to the opportunity, even when the latter was being stubborn, thinking that the abortion was successful. And when Marina had to leave after agreeing to Sir Philip's proposal, she gives her advice and sends her on her way. She might not have agreed with Penelope's change of wardrobe because it isn't her style or to her liking, but she doesn't stop her or exercise her power over her to keep her from making those changes. She accepts that it is Penelope's prerogative to make these choices, and she's delighted and helps to advocate for Philippa's marriage. Portia Featherington does her damnedest to help the women in her life. She does have their best interests at heart. Those interests might clash with what, say, Marina or Penelope want for themselves. But if we're honest with ourselves, honest with the times they're living in, and honest with the realization that the only reason why things work out well for those girls is because they are living in a romance novel, then we will know and agree that Portia does act with their best interests at heart. She's a realist, living in a world of romance, who pushes for caution with a cynicism born of experience and disappointment. Why else would she tell Penelope that what is foolish is being unreasonable about what you can achieve, if not that she has been unreasonable in her past about what she could achieve and got burned as a result? Portia Featherington clawed her way and put in the work to make it to the present circumstances she's in right now. You know she doesn't take anything for granted. You know that every one of her victories, her daughters being settled into their marriages, working her way around her husband's debts and death, scamming his cousin, securing the estate for her grandchildren, every single one of her victories have been hard won. And they've been won for the sake of her daughters, the women that she's closest to, that she holds in her heart, nettling and contrary as they might be. That right there is a girl's girl. Let me know if you agree or disagree. And thank you for making it all the way to the end of this long video. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you aren't subscribed yet, share this video if you can, as it does help grow my channel. A huge thank you to my patrons. Thank you all for your support. You encourage me to keep making these videos and putting my voice out there. Thank you. If you would like to support me on Patreon and can afford it, because I know times are hard for everyone, then do check out the link in my description bar. Like I said earlier on in the video, my next Bridgerton video, dropping next week at 5 p.m. EST, will be focused on Cressida Cowper. So keep an eye out for that. If you enjoy anime or manga content as well, those videos drop on Mondays at 5 p.m. EST, and my bookish content drops on Fridays at 5 p.m. EST. Until my next video, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.